The journey is conversations with ordinary people about stories of transformation and how we may have had setbacks in our life and how we persevered through those, how we've learned from those obstacles, and how they've maybe helped us on our path today.
Well, welcome to The Journey. My name is Kevin Polkey, and I am the host of The Journey. And today we have a special guest, Mike White. We've known each other for a long time, going way back to when we both attended Bethesda Covenant Church. And I think that's where we first originally met. And then our
Yep.
paths have crossed a handful of times over the years. So, welcome to The Journey, Mike.
Thanks, Kevin.
So, Mike, as we just get started, one of the questions that I always ask guests is if you had the opportunity, and I know you're busy with a lot of different aspects, career and your volunteering and your community projects, what do you have, what do you do for fun when you have the opportunity for fun?
Wow. Um, I do have a busy life, but finding fun. I think now, um, I like to go skeet and trap shooting. So I have a group of guys that we go and we break little tiny clay pigeons, and I do that quite a bit on the side. So that's kind of fun. It is unrelated to anything that I do, and I think when we do something fun, we have to disconnect from the stuff that is in our daily wheelhouse. So, I do a lot of skeet shooting, sporting clays, trap shooting, and things like that. So there's a number of places in Rockford that I do that. So that's what I do in my spare time.
So how did that come about? What's the story about how you got into skeet shooting or trap shooting?
So, growing up, my dad was a hunter. So we hunted quite a bit, doing a lot of pheasant hunting. Get up before school started, and we'd go hunt different properties. And then I'd bring school clothes, and he'd drop me off at school. And so I had great memories hunting with my dad, and we had hunting dogs. And as time went on, the dogs had passed away, and we hunted less. And after my dad passed away, I inherited a lot of his guns, and just started kind of got back and not necessarily the desire to hunt again, but the sporting aspect of shooting and having fun with that. So I had a couple guys that shoot for the Cosmo organization in Rockford. And we had a team and we started shooting out at Plug and Pellet. And then it kind of just grew from there where it's like anything that you enjoy, it kind of just it morphs and becomes a lot more than what it started at. It started at just maybe doing something, 8, 10 times a year to now it's probably 50, 60 times a year, or maybe more. So, but it's something that I enjoy. I do it with my kids. My wife enjoys it. We have a place up in northern Wisconsin, and we also shoot up there too. So, um, on a recreational basis, non-competitive, but it's a lot of fun.
Nice, nice. Well, it is an interesting that different people, I have two brother-in-laws that do the same and a couple guys that I know do the same. They don't necessarily golf, but they trap shoot
Yeah.
so it is an interesting how that works out.
I think they're very similar hobbies in the sense that you're never going to hit perfection. You always have a desire to, you always want to improve. It's always something you can do socially with some friends or relatives and have a good time doing it. But it's very similar to golf, just a different, you have a firearm instead of golf clubs, but you have a target. One's a white ball and one's a little tiny orange bird, but I think you're trying to accomplish the same thing. So,
And even though you can do it with other people, it's really about competing with yourself, and it's
oh, 100%.
bring that piece, yeah.
Yeah, you think you're good, and then all of a sudden you're not. So it's just like golf, where you have a really good round, and all of a sudden you're going to go back out and think you're going to repeat it, and it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah.
And trap shooting and sporting clays is exactly the same thing. So, your mind messes with you. So,
Yeah, memory of what you just did is probably not beneficial or a predictor of the future.
no, no, sometimes it's punishment. I'll tell you the
Yeah,
truth. So,
exactly. So Mike, yeah, tell us a little bit about growing up. You mentioned that you spent time with your dad hunting before school. Are you from the Rockford area?
born and raised. So my dad's from Rockford, my grandfather's from Rockford, so I'm third generation Rockfordian. Grew up on the Northeast Side, went to Guilford High School, played football for Guilford, was on the state championship team in 1982. So a lot of great experiences in high school. Went to Western Illinois and finished there. Started working for my dad out of school, and my dad owned it was in the financial services industry, and I worked for him for 3 years. And as father and son, probably not the best way to start out, just because there's different relationships that were kind of crossing over between father and son, employer, employee. So I left and I went to work in institutional money management for the next probably 12 years. And then my mom had passed away and my dad had health issues and I was traveling quite a bit. And we kind of circled back and said, well, maybe this is a good time for me to kind of sit down and let's talk about moving forward as far as your succession plan and where I want to be. And we worked something out. And then I ended up buying his firm in 2004, I believe it was. And so I own and manage a financial services practice and also tax practice. So we basically handle financial planning, money management, tax planning, tax prep, since we're also a tax practice. My wife is my partner running the operational side in the tax practice. And we're located in the Waterside building, which has been a family property for over 40 years, and now I own and manage it. So it's kind of nice to I come to work every day and I get to see my younger self. And what I mean by that is so we have limestone walls on our lower level, and I get to see the mortar between the limestone because it was my 18-year-old hands when I was an indentured servant working for my father and my brothers, where we were basically rehabbing this building. And now I'll be 60 next year, and looking at my 18-year-old hands on the wall, I'm still sitting in the same place is kind of it's it's a great experience. It's you kind of you can measure benchmark life a little bit that way too. So it's kind of cool. So have second marriage, blended family. So I have two children with my wife Christy, and Rachel and Kyle. Who Rachel is working for us now. She just graduated from University of Milwaukee, and Kyle's at Clark University in Dubuque. And then my son Logan, you know Logan. So Logan works in mental health services. He works for works for Marshmallow's Promise, Marshmallow Hope. I can't think of what it's called.
Your false hope, yeah.
Yep. And he is an advocate working for them and in the Rockford area. And then I have a granddaughter, Nona, and so she's going to be 2 years old and spend a lot of time with her as well. So yeah, that's kind of my story. I have two brothers. One's still here, one's in Detroit area, and then I get to work and spend 23 hours a day with my wife, which is a gift and pleasure. So it's a lot of fun.
Sure. Well, it is an interesting when I think of my brother-in-law Rob Grindle,
Yep.
and when he's been in retail more residential mortgages his entire life or the majority of his life, and I think of with him how he was like served as a counsel when people were making those, especially those first purchases of a home, and all the nerves that go along with it. And I think of your role as a financial working with someone from a financial perspective, their wealth management, as well as an accountant doing that you're also, serving as a counsel to them regarding, sometimes not necessarily good news and sometimes good news, and how to stick with a plan and persevere through the good times as well as the not so good times.
Yeah, someone told me, well, actually, I have a partner, Mark Lotzer, and Mark's father actually started our firm in 1949, and my dad bought it from him in 1980, and so on. So I've known Mark my whole entire life, and Mark says basically what we do is pastoral, and I've really thought about that, and it makes a lot of sense because you are in this pastoral relationship, not just only on finances, but on life goals and dealing with the ups and downs of life, and you're going to have those, and not only how do you navigate that on a financial basis, but how do you navigate just finances as it relates to every other aspect of your life as well, and kind of being that resource, being that confident, being that trusted advocate, if you will, that there's a lot of trust and that's bestowed upon you to help that person navigate life, if you will. So it is certainly pastoral. I would say that, and it is something that you have to have a love for it, love of people, love of engagement of their hopes, their dreams, their wishes, and being along on the ride with them. Because I always say all the time, there's a story behind the money. There's everyone has what they have, but there's always a story of how did they get there? How did you get kind of like where your journey, if you will. So we speak every day about the journey, the journey to where you're at and the journey also moving forward as well. So it is kind of an interesting field that I never would have imagined that I would be or do exactly what I do right now. Take all the fundamental or the technical stuff out of the equation. It is truly relationship management on a pastoral basis, without a doubt.
And we were, speaking of ups and downs, that, part of what we're going to talk about today is part of that in your life, that you've
Yep.
had a significant setback with your son Connor. And so maybe introduce us to Connor and tell us a little bit about Connor and then his journey as well as where you're at now carrying that on.
So I get goosebumps. So I'm going to navigate emotion as we're doing this. So bear with me a little bit. So Connor. So I have two sons, Connor and Logan. They're 5 years apart. Logan's the older brother. Connor was born really an easy child, just easy child, and as he kind of started growing up, we noticed that there was issues with anxiety, and the things that you really just odd things, like the pain of having your hair cut, the pain of cutting your nails. Um, Having a very structured expectation of what your day is going to be. And when it doesn't go that way, not a meltdown, but certainly it is throwing a wrench into the day when your expectations or when your expectations of how the day is going to go are not met. And that was Connor. So also throw in there, spattering a lot of mental health stuff, possibly ADHD, what have you. So I would say Connor was a challenge, but I would say an incredible heart, and incredible mind. But there was, you read the article that was written about him where it was, I called him a beautiful heart and a tortured mind. And that was kind of Connor. I mean, Connor had that where I think he would do anything for you, but I think he just had such a low self-esteem or self-worth of himself that we just battled constantly with him, always trying to prop him up and let him know what his value was, what his worth was, and what he meant to us. He just didn't see it the same way. He just struggled with that, and I don't know why. I mean, I think you look at things and you start asking questions. Is this environmental? Is it biological? And we don't get those answers. We just don't. So consequently, there were struggles along the way that we battled, and when you deal with mental health, some days you win and some days you lose. And it was a long period of time of just trying to keep the train on the tracks and helping him along the way. And a number of things happened. I went through a divorce, and that was extremely detrimental for him, where you turn his life upside down. And I'm not sure the train ever got back on the track after that. And you get mental health advocates involved, and there's a big disconnect between on the medical side of who's prescribing stuff, on the mental health side, and it's difficult. And so he got to worse and worse places where it was harder to dig him out of the hole on a daily basis. And so the bad days got really bad, and the good days got fewer. And all of us tried to work really hard to try to help him, but not really sure where the direction was going to go. And um, so he got involved in a lot of going from prescribed meds to stuff that he was probably getting on the street or through wherever. And I believe it was self-coping of the pain that he felt. And it was a way for him to kind of um, to medicate that pain. And it got to the point where um, we got him on his own. He was 24 years old, and we got him into his own house, and try to, you as a parent or as parents, you try to pave the way for your kids and give them every opportunities. And these opportunities turned into missteps, and things were happening and this and that. And ultimately, we saw kind of the writing on the wall and wasn't sure what was going to happen. But eventually, through and we made every effort we could. I think is all everyone in the family did. And I got a call one day from his brother. I was sitting right here in this seat right here, and the call that no parent ever wants to get. And Connor had overdosed, and he had overdosed on a Monday, and my son Logan had spent pretty much the week with him. He got out of the hospital, and Logan was spending the week with them, and left on Thursday night because he had been there for more than a day. He said, Dad, I just need to go home. And Connor was in a good place. We thought he was okay. We're going to come back and check on him in the morning. And so Logan's wife came back the next morning before work to check on him, and Connor had passed away sometime that night, and it was a fentanyl overdose. And there's a lot of questions in the sense of where did he get it? Did he know what he was doing? And we don't get the answers to those questions. We just don't. I mean, it's just that day was a day that changed everyone's lives forever. And so that was May 27th, 2022, about 3.5 years ago. And, you know, I think the first thing that happens is this immense amount of just shock that you go through because, I don't think you're given the tools to process when something like that happens, how you're supposed to feel, what are you supposed to do? And I think your system just shuts down and truly a shock, not just on an emotional or psychological basis, but I think on a physical basis, because it's like a lightning bolt going through your body. And what do you do? What step do you make? So you go through all the planning process that you do. I'm lucky that I have a strong faith, and I'm a Catholic convert that converted about 18 years ago, and my faith is extremely strong. And I never got mad at God, not one time. And I didn't ask, well, I did ask why quite a bit, but the answer I got was, you're not going to get the answer. And so, my journey really was upon his death, not what happened, or even going back. And I think as a parent, you're going to, I think you torture yourself asking why, what could I have done? What could I have done? And that's a natural thing. And I think, well, I know I did it. I know I bartered with myself. If I woulda, coulda, shoulda done this or done that. But it takes time to come to a level of acceptance that I don't think there's anything that I could have done that would change the outcome. And you don't get that acceptance day one. You get that after self-torture for a long period of time of realizing that I'm not finding an answer that's going to change the outcome. And so I, through my faith, through prayer, through going to church quite a bit, I was asking God, why? And I came to the belief that there is something bigger than what just happened. And part of it is you don't get the answers, but I got to believe that Connor's life, it's not done. It's not over. And I came to the belief that this is just part of his journey, and that is his mortal journey, but his journey is not done yet. And it was my job to tell his life, tell his story. And if I could tell that, or if I could help people going through the same thing, then he lives vicariously through me and his story continues on. So I converted to a meaningful and purpose path pretty quick after he died. And that was, I was unwilling to accept an empty chair. I couldn't do it. There's not going to be an empty chair at the table. And I didn't know what it looked like, what it meant. But I came to meaningful and purposeful really, really quick. And I bypassed all the grief steps right away that you probably should go through before you get to meaningful and purposeful. But I'm a problem solver. I've always been that way where it's like, I can't change what happened, but what are we going to do? How do we march forward? So I did a couple things. I had worked for the Community Foundation as a advisor for many years, and I was also on their board. And I'm a huge believer in the Community Foundation and what they do for our community. And I reached out to him and I said, I want to create an endowment for my son that will live in perpetuity, but I don't know I don't know, I haven't defined it yet. So, and this is like, I want to say 10 days after Connor's gone. So we sat down and worked with them and worked with Dan Ross and worked with, um, Sierra there, worked with Jennifer, a number of people that basically defined what do we want. And we came up with Connor's second chance. And what Connor's second chance is Connor's second chance post life to help people. And so I thought, well, you know what I can do? I'm a good at I can fundraise. And if I get that money within the foundation, it is an endowment that will live in perpetuity forever. We get to decide where that money then goes. And through the foundation, we chose Youth for Christ. And the reason we chose Youth for Christ is they have an outreach program for, I would call it youth at risk in our community. And I would say youth like Connor, that maybe someone needs a helping hand where it could be as an advocate. Maybe they need some type of guidance at school. Maybe they need referrals to mental health. Maybe they need counseling. Maybe they just need socks and shoes and underwear and clothes or whatever it might be. But if we can help them and they identify youth at risk, then Connor's helping these kids, and this is his second chance. So I got to meaning and purpose really quick through the foundation and also through Youth for Christ. And it was helpful for me. It was helpful because I started the healing process right away. And I looked at it as maybe this is, God's path for me in my healing to take something that I had little control over helping. I had little control over the outcome of where Connor was going to be. I wish I'd like to say that it'd be different, but I'm not sure it would have ever been different. So we kind of started that process. And at this point right now, we have over 70 some thousand dollars in Connor's endowment. And my goal is by the end of next year to have over 100,000. And my goal is 100,000, but I think I'll reassess and probably going to bump that to 200,000 because all that means is that we have more money going to more kids at risk, helping Youth for Christ identify who those kids are. And I believe all kids come to a Y in the road. And if you can have people, boots on the ground, identifying who they are, and if you can give them that gentle nudge to move left instead of right or right instead of left, then maybe, you know what, Connor, that's him helping those kids. So, and that's how I kind of barter with myself, if you will, and finding that meaning and purpose through something that was truly tragic, where I kind of believe I have a choice. And my choice is I didn't get to choose what happened, but I get to choose on how I react to it. And I'm not begrudging anybody for any choices that they make, because everyone, it's individual. But I needed to have positive, purposeful movement for my son moving forward because I know that's what he would want. And so giving you a really long story, and I apologize, but that's kind of how I got to where I'm at. And there's a lot of other nuances with it too, but I'll let you kind of, steer me a little bit because I can go forever on this. So,
Sure. Well, thank you. I mean, I know, you know, it doesn't ever get easier to tell Connor's story and tell your story with Connor. Uh, just because you've done it numerous times, probably gives you an indication that you can do it. And so there isn't that anxiety with it, but doesn't necessarily mean it doesn't bring up emotion or fear. So thank you for sharing your story and Connor's story. You said something earlier that I just wanted to kind of like touch on. You said something about at some point you saw the writing on the wall, meaning where Connor was at with the anxiety and the mental health issues and the self-medicating, and what that reminded me of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross with her studying of we have taken it as if it's the 5 steps of grief, meaning post life. But her original work was about individuals who were terminal. It was her observations of when she was working with individuals that were terminal, and that sometimes when we're struggling with individuals who, when we're the significant others of someone who are struggling with mental health issues or self-medicating addiction issues, um, we go through those stages, of denial and of anger and trying to barter and feeling depressed. And at some point, to your point, is that we accept that we can do everything possible within our means, but ultimately it's still their journey and decisions. There's times, that we may choose not to do something, and then we have to own that part, own that regret when we could have, but we didn't, for whatever reasons. But if we were mindful enough to do the best we could with what we had, um, there ends up being an acceptance, to your point, of I don't know if it would have changed the outcome if I would have done A or B differently. And then I think ultimate what David Kessler talks about is that how do I form some by going through this and the outcome being what Connor's outcome was, how do I find some meaning or purpose or as Xavier Whitford talks about having purpose in the pain, in the midst of the
Hmm.
pain. And I think, you know, the foundation, the endowment that you're working on, I think is definitely an aspect of that. So, um, and that doesn't, to your point, that doesn't necessarily mean, oh, all is good.
Oh,
We still got to live with it because 2.5 years is not very long in the scope of things, as far as healing goes.
yeah, grief's a funny thing. Grief is like, you think you understand it until you don't. And it's this fluid thing that it's like you're never in the same place. And I think, I've read so much about it, just trying to understand uh, if I can educate myself more and more, then maybe I'll better understand it. And the one thing I've come to understand is I will live with it. That this grief will be my companion for the rest of my life. And I have to find a way to live with it and understand it. And but still at the same time, um, you have to make good memories going forward. You still have to. Life has this way of it still moves. And part of it is I didn't want Connor to be forgotten, and that was part of my guilt is that he's not done yet. And then I struggled with, that we all become a memory at some point in time. And I didn't want him to become a memory. So that's where the permanent endowment came in. But at the same time, you have other kids. You have to live life and you still have to make those memories. And one thing that I think anybody who loses someone, whether it's a child or whether it's someone close to you, you become very acquainted to the frailty of life. And you become acquainted to that amore fati, that we will die, and that's a fact of life, is that life will cease for us at some point in time. And I'm not afraid to talk about that. But what then I do reflect on is, well, what am I going to do about that? If I know that I have a finite amount of time here and I don't know how long that is, that's, you don't know. Well, then you start taking a look at what you do and you start discriminating about how you spend your time. What do you do with your time, the people you're with? And you get very, at least I do, I get very, I must say critical, but I'm cognitive of it being very purposeful. And I have this coin that I passed out to people, and I give it to people, and it's a memento, but it also reminds me of what I'm here for. And my motto for myself is be good, do good. And part of it is when I'm done, and first of all, I want to see my son again. So that's kind of my barter with my Lord right now, is that um, if I do what's right and I do what's good and I do what's good in his eyes, then I get the reward of seeing my son again. So that's helpful for me, knowing that this is just my earthly life, but I will see him again. And I look forward to that day, whenever that day comes, to be reunited with him and then also share with him what his life was after he left, and still the people that he touched, and having it be purposeful and meaningful. So be good, do good. Because again, we're all stewards. We're just renting time and space here. And ultimately, when you are done, you want to look back and, at least on your own personal life, feel like I did okay. Not just financially, but I did okay in terms of, the relationships I have, the stuff that I did. And I don't want to die with regret. I don't want to die thinking, shoulda, coulda, woulda. So in the moment right now, and maybe Connor's life or maybe his death was a gift in the sense that it was a wake up call for me that you don't have all the time in the world. And, so you take a look at your relationships. And I look at them very differently now. I look at my relationship differently. I have a peace about me, thanks to God, that I didn't have before. I know Connor's with me every day. I talk to him every day. I believe he sees what I see. So I still live my life knowing my son is sitting right next to me, which is very, very helpful. Do I miss him? Every day. Do I cry? I cry weekly, because that's just grief, what we live with. And they didn't give you a book. There's no, how do you navigate that? So I live with it. But again, ultimately, he gave me a gift, and the gift is how I look at life now. And that's kind of my journey at this point in time. So I have become, I don't say philanthropic, but my wife and I do a lot of things to help other people, and it makes me feel good. And we help other organizations, and I have been blessed beyond anything that I thought I would be blessed by. Because I'm blessed, I feel it's my obligation to be a blessing. And I choose to live my life trying the best I can to be a blessing, not just to my people, but also to my community. And so it's a challenge. So I hand that coin out that says, be good, do good. And at the bottom, it says, service greater than self. And I believe that, you know, kind of our currency is what we give to other people, of ourselves. That's just our currency. So ultimately, I'm going to have the same faith that Connor did, and I will go on to hopefully to see him and be with my Lord. But um, I hopefully will look back and knowing with his help, I got my second chance to live the second half of my life being the best Mike who I could be. And that's kind of his gift to me. And so, my journey, gosh, everyone can look at, a tragedy differently. And I don't know why I look at it this way. I don't know how it happened. I can tell you I was never mad at God. I'm not an angry person at this point in time. Believe me, I wish things were different. Every day I wish things were different. But you said a word that resonates with me earlier. And I think it's the best word I can come to, and it's acceptance. And there is a surrender and acceptance of things that happen in your life that we don't get the answers for. We just don't. But we do have a choice on how we react to that stuff and what we do with it after it happens with us. And so I'm doing my darndest right now to live that life that's meaningful, purposeful, be good, do good, and certainly trying to give service greater than self because of really the gift that Connor gave me. And that was the ability to look at my life and say, is this the life you want to live? Or is there something greater that you want to do? And I'm not there. I mean, every day, I'm a sinner and I make mistakes every day. And every day I ask the Lord for his grace, his forgiveness, his understanding, and most importantly, his mercy. But I know that I have an intent every day to do better than yesterday. And some days I do, and some days I fall, and I need to remind myself of, let's put the train back on the tracks, and we need to do better. But I will tell you, it's a good frame of mind to have. I think it's Connor's second chance to me and his gift to me at this point in time.
And I think, Mike, you hit on a handful of different things, and I think, people will, you hear a lot about, oh, Mike was part of a state champion football team, and he was able to, get into the family business, and then got into the family, the what your dad did, and those types of things, and I think when we have things that would be considered successes or victories, it's what we do with them is probably more important than the actual victory or success in itself, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I remember that you guys winning the state championship, and I remember going and watching some of those games, and some of those, at the very end coming back and winning some of those games.
Yeah, I kind of feel like we're the Bears right now, tell you the truth.
Exactly. But I think, if we just stayed in those stories and then didn't take that experience and those stories and then apply them to life, then they were just a memory, like
Right.
and stamped in time. But I think with setbacks, with Connor's death and what you decide to do with it, or the other end of the continuum, being part of a state championship, it's what we do with it to build on, and so that in itself it doesn't define us, but it becomes part of the story, not not the story. And
Absolutely. I would say the other thing too is help.
yeah,
You have to have support around you without a doubt. And I have been extremely fortunate to have really, really good people around me, mentors, and people that are honest with you, honest with, certainly your pain, understanding it. And I will say one person, my wife is hugely important to me and been my best friend, and I couldn't get through life without her. But there's a gentleman that his name is Jim Johnson. And Jim and I have something in common that he lost his son. So Jim has been I would call him my spiritual coach. Started out kind of going through grief counseling, but then, now we're kind of at this life coach status. And as a matter of fact, I'll see him tomorrow. And the running joke between Jim and I is, after we get done with the session, we always joke, who's buying this time? You know,
mhm.
did he get more out of it than I did, or either way. But I would say that having support around you is just monumentally helpful. So without a doubt.
Well, as you may or may, the journey wasn't accidentally called the journey. It was based on Joseph Campbell's The Hero's Journey. And in the midst of the hero's journey, um, as Joseph Campbell wrote about it, was this idea that we get thrust from our ordinary or our familiar, and we get thrust into a whole initiation phase. And sometimes it's a choice that we make. When we, go to a different job or in a new relationship. And other times we're thrust. In this case, when Connor, you got the call from Logan that Connor had passed away, and now you get thrust into your dark night of the soul, and now you're going to be initiated into. You could stay stuck, permanently stuck. You could suppress it and stuff it, and then it comes back and haunts you in some other way. Or you could do with the help of helpers, right? Your wife and other people, and then a guide like Jim as a guide that's going to navigate through this, and who Mike can become as a result of this that he wouldn't have been if everything would have been status quo.
Right.
And I think that is in essence the journey. And then after we learn those things about ourselves that we wouldn't have learned in that dark night, then our responsibility is to bring that back to the community, bring that back because it isn't about us, it's about others.
Right.
And I think that in a lot of ways exemplifies what you've been doing, not just the last 2.5 years leading into that, and then specifically since May of 22. And I think, where does it end? Exactly.
Yeah. You don't
It
know. It's the journey.
yeah, right. I mean, it's when the sun doesn't rise
Right.
and doesn't set, but that will probably not be in our lifetime. And so it's just a matter of we just keep showing up. And I think the idea of having a motto, having a code of be good, do good. It. I think what's important about that and about serving something greater than yourself, that we all should be mindful, what is our code? And sometimes it gets forged out of tragedy. Other times we can vicariously learn from someone else and going, I don't want to be terminally ill before I start living life. Um, you know, I can we can choose to do that right now. We can choose to be good so that we can do good. So,
Yeah, and that was kind of that gift, and I still look at it, and I initially I thought of Connor's second chances with other people, but and the reality is maybe it's Connor's second chance with me. So and it's my second chance. So, this journey, it just kind of morphs and changes. But again, I think it's a good journey in the sense that you come out of something that was extremely painful, and that you can be an agent of goodness out of something like that. whether it's change, whether it's helping, whatever it might be. And that's my choice. So every day I wake up, and I'm not saying every day is rosy at all. It's a choice we have to make every day. But, I wake up and I think, it's either negative mental energy or positive mental energy. And that's my choice every day. So that one's on me. So, and I ask his help every day, like, hey, buddy, I need some help today.
Right.
And I know he's right there, with his hand on my shoulder going, okay, Dad, we can do this. So, and we do, what I think for the most part we do. And I am grateful for the time that I had with him, although all short. Um, it will carry me through the rest of my life. So.
Yeah. Well, Mike, as we get ready to wrap up today, any last things that you would want to share to a Connor or to a Mike that may be listening?
Oh boy. Um, I think for Connor, I mean, you have to learn to love yourself. It's for anybody who looks down. And I would say, unfortunately, whatever we search for, we're going to find it. Unfortunately or unfortunately. And Connor sought for the negative, and he found the negative. And I would tell anybody at this point in time, and even my younger Mike myself, it's a journey. And what you seek, you will find. And before you take that first step, I would say, what are you seeking? And then your journey will basically mold you and direct you towards that end result. And belief is an incredible thing. I think your mind is an incredible muscle that controls the rest of your body, and we have to condition that. And we have to condition that there's good in life, there's good in people, there's good in ourselves. And sometimes we are our own worst critic, and we don't see that. And we have to summon people and mentors or anybody around us to see the goodness in what we have in ourselves, because that goodness can be projected in our community. So everyone is important. And it starts with ourself and loving ourself. And then in turn, if you can love yourself, then you can love other people. So find that way, find that first step where you can basically find the goodness in yourself and take that first step. And I believe that that first step's the hardest one, but every step after that just gets easier and easier. And it's a journey, and you're going to have ups and downs with it along the way. But you got to find the goodness in ourselves, the kindness in ourselves. I remember there's a movie, I can't think of what it was, but there was a line from the movie, and a gentleman was asked, "Are you a good person or a bad person?" And there's three ways to answer it. The bad person will say, "I'm a good person." And the good person will answer, "I don't know." And because a good person doesn't look at themselves as a good person, they look at the flaws in themselves. And I think we all have the potential to be good people. And it's okay to say, "I don't know." But then, seek and search for the goodness, not just in ourselves, but around us. And ultimately that journey is going to take you to a better place. It really will.
No, I couldn't say it any better. Is that having a purpose, having a code that when days get darker, we then double down on
Yeah.
that purpose and code, and then when days are lighter or good, then we savor those moments because they're not going to last either. So
Oh, gratitude, brother. Gratitude. I mean, every day it's like when the guy passes me in the street going, twice as fast as I'm going, I have gratitude that I have calmness in my life and peace that I don't need to be racing like that. So I don't have road rage anymore, but I have a peace about me. And I would say gratitude is a word that unfortunately is used too much, but man, there is an important word in our life, and that is to have gratitude for everything and anything around you at this point in time.
yeah, absolutely. Mike, if someone wanted to either donate or get involved with Connor Second Chance, what would be the best way to reach out to you?
So the best way is actually you can go to the Community Foundation website, and Connor has a page on there, and there's a QR code you can donate. Um, that's probably the easiest way, and that is www.cfnil.org. And as a matter of fact, this week we just got $2,000 that came into his endowment this week for people that have listened to my story, and it appeals to them, and they want to help. And I believe this is paying it forward because you're helping other kids, not just Connor, but you're helping kids that possibly, kids in need, kids that need that help. I believe that you can also reach out to Youth for Christ, awesome organization on a national basis, incredible on a local basis where they serve the Harlem community and also the Rockford community. They have a brand new facility on Charles Street right across from Swedish Pancake or the Sweden House. What is the
Stockholm.
Yeah, Stockholm Man, there we go. And basically, it's a wonderful organization that helps kids. And so, if you reach out to them, reach out to Community Foundation, or you can reach out to my office, and we can direct you to also. But the website's the easiest way to do it. Just go to the Community Foundation of Northern Illinois, and you'll find it.
Well, Mike, thank you so much for being with us today, and we will definitely be sharing this with as many people as we
Great.
can. So, for
Kevin, I appreciate it. I didn't know when we talked earlier what direction this was going to go, and it's kind of like I have a level of trepidation just because of, I never know what emotions are going to come out when I speak about stuff like this. But certainly, you guided me through my journey, and it was a great hour. So I appreciate your time.
Well, as Brene Brown would reference, that when we feel that vulnerability that comes up, but we decide to go in it, that's courage. And to not have that energy up would probably be that we weren't engaged. And so that energy comes up because you are and you were and you were present. And so there's vulnerability, but to go through that is courage. And so I thank you again.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it.
And for anyone listening, if for some reason Mike's story or Mike's sharing Connor's story, if that spoke to you or you think that someone may benefit from hearing this, please share this episode and reach out if necessary. And as always, I appreciate you being here, and I look forward to being with you next week.